the whole 6010. Fantasy Focus.
Welcome to Fantasy Focus. Today's podcast is presented by Geico. You can watch us every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN's Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube feeds, as well as the ESPN app, and you can download Fantasy Focus wherever you get your podcast. Now, on my note,
yes, sir,
it says show talent, Matthew, Daniel, and Field.
Right.
Let's be honest. There's only one person whose talent matters anymore.
Yeah, it's neither
It's
of
Derrick
us.
Henry.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Derrick Henry.
It's very
That's
true.
who the talent is on today's show.
Exactly. You and I are not show talent. You and I are show.
Yes, who's
Right.
talent?
Yes, talent should be in quotes on the list there. Daniel, real quickly before we get into Derrick Henry's heroics.
Yes.
Did you notice that Fields' voice got deeper as we started? Like, we were talking normally before the show. We were just chit-chatting us.
Yes.
Like, and then all of a sudden you were like, welcome. Like, you went deeper for a second. You went a little announcery.
It's my Dax Shepard voice.
Is that what it is?
Have you ever listened to his podcast?
I have not. I know it's very popular.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of his as an actor. I have not listened to the I don't listen to a ton of podcasts if I'm being perfectly honest.
Just our own show.
No, I don't even listen to ours. I download.
You just download it.
Download
Yeah.
ours.
Got it.
Look,
Yeah.
when I am in the car, I do one of two things.
Okay.
It depends on whether I have my kids with me or not.
Buffett Radio.
Sometimes I listen to Margaritaville Radio on Sirius XM.
Okay.
Our friends over there. Yeah, absolutely. I've been a guest DJ over there. I love Margaritaville. Margarita. Generally speaking, I listen to either Stern.
Okay.
I'm a big Stern fan. You guys all know that. Yep. Or if I have my kids in the car, I listen to what they want to.
Disney Radio.
These days it's like it's some Ariana Grande. It's like it's some Taylor Swift. My girls are, they'll be 10 soon. So it's that age range is basically what we're listening to.
So
or whatever's popular on TikTok right now.
Sure.
That's a big one
There's
too.
now a station, TikTok Radio, on Sirius XM. I believe it's channel 4.
Is it really?
It's TikTok. So it's basically all the songs you hear played 6,000 times on TikTok. You can hear it for the 6,001st time.
By the way, though, that's a great I'm all over that because that would make because right now I'm going through my phone like on I have my Apple Music and like I have a subscription of my daughter's request songs and like so now I'm driving and I'm a DJ. I'm a chauffeur and a DJ when my daughters are in the car. So yes, TikTok Radio, I'm all about that.
There might be
I would
something.
be all in on that.
Yeah. So what I was doing my Dax Shepard voice though,
Yes,
because
sir. Got
Dax
it.
at the start of his show, many podcasts are supported through ad reads, right?
Yeah, of course.
And
I know their shows. I know Dax's show is really popular.
Very popular, but it also starts with like a monumental number of it's like a marathon to begin the show.
Right.
And he always says, "Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are presented by," and he reads like 4 minutes of ad reads, and like it's actually entertaining enough because he does it in the Dax Shepard voice that I'm like,
right.
You know what? I will listen to that ad read. Like I'll power through for 4 straight minutes. So that's the genesis.
Open
of why
invitation for Dax Shepard to come host this show. Then
Absolutely.
He's definitely going to have Daniel on at some point. They are kindred spirits from Michigan.
That's right.
interesting.
I freaking
Okay.
love Dax Shepard. Armchair Expert is a super fun podcast.
Yeah,
I've
it's really
heard that. Everyone says that. Like I said, I'm a fan of his.
It's really good.
Fan of his as an actor. Fan of them actually by way as a couple. They're a really fun couple.
I
Well, then
agree.
his wife and Monica, who's the sort of the sidekick on Dax's show, did a spinoff, 10 episodes recently. We are presented by. Like I think this was over this. What month is it now? October. Anyways, like late summer until early fall, they did a great job as well. So a lot of content there in that family. That much. is for sure.
She's super talented too. So not surprising.
All right, so we're going to talk about Monday Night Football and Derrick Henry in just a little bit. But first, we're going to start with some news, Matthew. And let's begin in Cleveland. Did you see how many players were on their injury list yesterday?
I stopped reading after a while.
Yeah, 20 players on the injury list for the Cleveland Browns. Again, they play Thursday night, so it's just an estimation based off of a walkthrough or even maybe just a day off from practice. But let's start with the news that we do know that is concrete. The Kareem Hunt's not going to play in this game on Thursday night, Matthew. It's at least 3 weeks for Kareem Hunt. We mentioned that right at the end of the show yesterday. Kevin Stefanski confirmed it. Kareem Hunt out for at least 3 weeks, Matthew. And it sounds like Nick Chubb is not going to play on Thursday night.
It's looking unlikely as of this taping Tuesday morning.
Yes, it is. So let's talk through two things. One, what it means for Nick Chubb when he let's actually start in week 7. If the Browns are without both of these players, the value of Dearness Johnson or Demetric Felton, and then once Kareem Hunt let's say Nick Chubb returns before Kareem Hunt, what that means for his value, and whether that's 1 week, 2 week, or 3 weeks of action.
Okay, so let's start with this. If you're picking up a Cleveland Browns running back, and I think you should because it is Bimageddon We talked about this on the Fantasy Show on
it's
ESPN
brutal.
Plus. It is bye-mageddon. We have 6 teams on a bye this week.
Right.
And they are very, very good teams.
Yes.
Once again, the Bills, the Cowboys, so you're out without Ezekiel Elliott. The Jaguars, you're without James Robinson. The Chargers, you're without Eckler. The Vikings, you're without Dalvin Cook. And the Steelers, so you're without Najee Harris. So even before you get to injuries, there's a number of big-name running backs, and people were using Zach Moss and Devin Singletary as well, right? So there's 7 running backs that have been used in fantasy so far this year that are not playing due to bye before we even get to the injuries. So chances are you're going to need Dearness Johnson, or somebody in your league will. So Dearness Johnson, I assume, made the waiver wire column this week. And
Glad
to
you
me,
read it?
and I've not read it.
I know,
I've
so I'm glad
downloaded
you
it.
did.
I'm sorry, I downloaded it. Look, so Dearness Johnson is the guy that averaged over 5 yards a carry when he filled in last season for the Cleveland Browns under Kevin Stefanski. And with no Kareem Hunt or Nick Chubb, my expectation is that he gets the majority of the work. Now, you mentioned Felton, right? Fenton, I'm sure. I'm sorry.
Felton. Demetric Felton.
Demetric Felton.
Felton, yes.
Felton. Okay, that's what I thought. Demetric Felton. Sorry. Demetric Felton, as we talked about yesterday, much more of a pass catcher.
He has 2 carries this year, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, right. He's a scat back type. He's a Tavon Austin, I think, is the comp we used yesterday, right? Just to give people who haven't watched a lot of Browns games some context here. The guy that's going to be between the tackles that's going to get the majority work on Thursday night is Dearness Johnson, who I think is a solid player. Like, is he amazing? No. He's, a little bit. I think he's slightly better than just a guy, but he is somebody who's going to get a lot of volume on a short week on a team whose offense is around running the ball.
Was he the first pick in your AAF fantasy draft a few years ago?
Wow.
I know you did that. I'm being serious.
No, he is being serious. I'm the defending champion of that. We did an expert fantasy football league. Mike Clay was in the league. Daniel Dopp was in the league.
Yeah.
Among the people,
problem.
JJ Zachariason, our friend JJ was in the league, and
Really cool of you guys.
Scott
Really
Fish, I think, was in that
Scott
league.
Fish was in the league. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Pretty
we
much
did.
all the
Happy
experts in the
birthday,
industry.
Scott Fish, by the way.
Happy birthday, Scott Fish, one of the best people on the planet. So much love to Scott Fish. I will tell you that in that AAF fantasy league, I went undefeated. I ran the table, and my first pick, to be clear, was Trent Richardson.
Oh, okay, Trent Richardson. But wasn't
He was
Dearness
great.
Johnson on your team or something?
We had
him.
Dearness Johnson. Yep,
Okay.
exactly. We basically went with an Apollo stack, the Orlando Apollo stack. So we had Garrett
Right.
Gilbert,
They were a dominant
and Charles
team.
Johnson. They crushed it. Anyway, back to the Cleveland Browns. I apologize in advance to the video team that has to cut around the AAF talk there for the Dearness Johnson video for ESPN Fantasy's website and app. But what I would tell you is that I think Dearness Johnson is a viable borderline top 20 play. Like, I think he gets the majority of work here for an offense that is pretty good at running the ball. They're playing the Broncos, 8th best against the run over the last 4 weeks. Like, it's a pretty good defense. And as of this taping, we don't know the status of Baker Mayfield.
That's correct.
And so what does that offense look like if it's either less than 100% Baker Mayfield or Case Keenum? I think Case Keenum is actually a solid quarterback. I think he's gotten kind of a bad rap throughout his career. I think he's been put in some situations that haven't been, conducive to a quarterback being good. So I think he's a better than average backup quarterback, but he's still a backup quarterback who's going to prepare for a tough defense on a short week.
By the way, whoever loses that game from those two teams is
Yes,
going to be
sir.
waking up so salty on Friday morning. If the Browns go 3-4 after the way they started the season, they played Kansas City really tough, could have beaten them in week 1. They bounced back. They look like a team that's going to be really good this year. If they're 3-4, no good.
Right.
If the Broncos go to 3-4, 4 straight losses after a 3-0 start, oh boy. But yes, we'll have more on this game both tomorrow and Thursday when the preview show takes place, as it almost always does.
But Dearness Johnson, you agree with the assessment of 2 things. Number one is that Dearness Johnson is the back to roster in Cleveland for this week.
Agree, yeah.
And that he is somebody that should be picked up.
He is somebody that should be picked up. The only part that I don't disagree with that you said, but I want to clarify sort of my stance, is you said he's like a top 20-ish back for this week.
Yeah.
That's correct, Matthew. But the implied sentiment about a top 20 back normally is like, hey, not a must start, but a guy that probably will do pretty well for you based off of volume. I'm hopeful. I'm certainly not sure about it, though, because if the Browns are down to their backup quarterback against a good defense in Denver, and in a short week, when so many things have gone wrong for them and so many injuries, Odell Beckham Jr., isn't he uncertain to play on Thursday? Like, there's all kinds of uncertainty about this team on Thursday night. Like, it's possible this is a disaster game. I'll still have him ranked near top 20 in my running backs, assuming we get what we expect, which is that Nick Chubb does not play.
Here's the important thing, though. He's got a pulse. And I'm going to
this
tell you,
week,
this
yeah,
week,
especially.
he's got a pulse. Wait, he's playing? He's going to actually get snaps this week? Oh, he qualifies at running back? Oh, my God. Yes. Like, you guys just waking up, like you're getting through the week. You maybe you survived Derrick Henry, or you had a Monday night miracle from last night, whatever it is, but you haven't really turned your attention yet to week 7. I'm just telling you right now, it's ugly in them their streets at the running back position, especially given not only the buys, but all the injuries.
All right, let's get to Monday Night Football recap, Matthew. And we'll begin with the Bills because the Bills...
Before we get to Monday Night Football, can I just mention one other quick thing?
Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I just want to bring this up just because Michael Thomas is eligible to come off of injured reserve for the Saints. Thank you. The physical, yes, he was out for the first 6 weeks. He is eligible to come off this week for the physically unable to perform list for the Saints. Reporting right now suggests that he's still a few more weeks away. So just as you head into waivers tonight, and if you're thinking, oh, I'm getting Michael Thomas back this week, not so fast.
He's available in 14% of leagues right now on ESPN.com. So maybe take a look, see if perhaps your league overlooked Michael Thomas, but unlikely that it has. Now let's get to Monday Night Football recap, Matthew.
Or look in 2 days. Because Michael Thomas is one of those guys, upon this news that, hey, it might be a couple more weeks, I could see teams sitting here again.
Couple impulse drops.
Impulse drops because you're like, I got to field a lineup this week. I mean, we should have a conversation about sort of bye week strategy specifically for this week in terms of buys. But I could see people like, I can't wait any longer. Like, I don't have a quarterback or a defense or another wide receiver. So I could see Michael Thomas being available on some waiver wires come Thursday, Friday. So anyway, this is an important week to pay attention to the waiver wire, not only for your own team, but seeing what other teams do as well.
Take a look for Michael Thomas if perhaps somebody drops him this week. Now let's get to Monday Night Football recap as the Titans upset the Bills in an amazing game. 34-31 is the final. The Bills attempted to go for it on 4th down with just seconds to go in the game. They were down 3 at that time. I don't have a major issue with the call. They are stopped short as Josh Allen sort of slips on a quarterback sneak.
Yeah, I didn't have an issue with the call, but if I'm being honest, I had to kick the field goal. I get it; their defense had been bad, and like you're going to overtime. But I don't know. They'd been stopped the play before. I don't know. For me, I think I would have kicked the field goal. But I don't have an issue with the call exactly. You expect to convert that.
Yeah, 6 inches with one of the best offenses in football. You should expect to convert that. But Josh Allen was great last night, Matthew. He has looked very much like the player that you drafted as likely the second quarterback off the board. He had 28.7 fantasy points last night, 333 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 26 rushing yards. The good news here, Matthew, is that he's Josh Allen. That's really my take on him. Nothing to break down too much more on that game from him last night. Zach Moss has just 5.9 fantasy points, 39 total yards, 2 catches. His lowest output of the season. Has not been a particularly efficient runner so far this year, Matthew, but still, if you're starting a Bills running back, I think we feel pretty consistent that it's still going to be Zach Moss over Devin Singletary. Any other takeaways from Zach Moss last night?
Just the fact that on the drive in the game, he was the running back. It was interesting to see. Like, so they're trailing, and they need to get down the field quickly, and so you might have thought, I wonder if it's going to be Singletary because he's considered, quote, the more of the pass-catching running back, and yet it was Zach Moss for the majority, if not the entirety of that drive, and he ends up with 4 targets in the night, just 5 for Singletary. So I actually think you should be encouraged if you're somebody who rosters Zach Moss, encouraged by that usage late in the game. But it still remains a committee and we prefer Moss to Singletary based on the touchdown upside. Singletary ran well, I thought, at the beginning of the game, though.
He did. He looked good. He was motoring as he is motor Singletary. Stephon Diggs, 9 catches, 89 yards, plus a touchdown on 11 targets. Hasn't had like a monster start to the season, Matthew, but still, it's Stephon Diggs. You're going to be playing him every single week, except for this one when he's on a bye. Emmanuel Sanders.
Still a really, really good game for him.
Yeah, he'll take 24 fantasy points every night. Emmanuel Sanders has 5 catches for 91 yards. His solid start to the season continues. Cole Beasley is the...
Should have had a touchdown, too. He missed him wide open in the end zone. Allen just didn't see him.
And then Cole Beasley, 7 catches, 88 yards, plus a touchdown. He's going to have 4 or 5 of these games per season where he has 20-plus fantasy points, and then he might sandwich those with 3 catches for 22 yards. Cole Beasley in a nutshell.
It is clearly, I think, through 6 games now, and it's important because it's one of the best offenses in football. I think we've clearly established a pecking order. It is Diggs, it is Sanders, it is Knox. I'm sorry, it is Diggs, it is Sanders, it is Beasley among the wide receivers.
Right, because here's the things that's interesting, is that Dawson Knox left this game with a hand injury. He had 7.5 fantasy points last night, 2 of which come off a Philly special play, where he threw a touchdown, a 2-point conversion to Josh Allen. He left the game because of a hand injury that was suffered before that. It's reportedly a broken hand for Dawson Knox. So he's
he
a tight
threw
end.
a 2-point conversion with a broken hand?
Yeah.
So we will.
Good for him.
So
He'll miss some time. Let's be honest. I mean, if you're a tight end with a broken hand, you don't play through it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can block, you can't catch.
Yeah, no, it's obviously a tough break. Obviously, though, you're going to need to pick up a tight end anyway because he's on a bye this week, and so we hope. I don't know how broken it is. Is there a splint that he can play with? But certainly it's going to limit his whether it limits his availability or not. It's certainly going to limit his upside for what we care about in terms of catching the ball. Shame as well because he had a touchdown. He actually had a rushing touchdown in this game.
It's called
that
back.
got called back
Yeah.
Based on a hold, I believe, from Emmanuel Sanders. And I thought that was a ticky-tack call.
Every wide receiver thinks it's ticky-tack call. I thought it was pretty clearly holding, but
Still think it was ticky-tack.
Okay.
I have a lot of Dawson Knox, though, so I may
I
not
was
be
going to say, your
I may not be the
glasses.
most objective judge,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest. I mean,
I love that I can hear the smile on your face as you say, I do have a lot of Dawson Knox, though, if I can be honest.
Yeah,
Pretty
That's
ticky-tack,
great.
right?
just
He
want to own
tackled
it.
him, but it was kind of ticky-tack, right?
Yeah.
It was a little ticky-tack.
Let's talk about Ryan Tannehill for a second, though, Matthew.
Sure.
Under 15 fantasy points for for the fourth time in 6 weeks so far this season. He threw for 347 yards in week 2. He's averaged just 227 since that time. Just 3 rushing yards last night. He has 12.9 fantasy points. I don't think he was coming, or people I think probably bailed on Ryan Tannehill in a 10-team league if you've somehow left your draft with him coming into the season. 12-team league, perhaps as well. 14-team league, perhaps as well. 16-team league, there's not a lot of great options, but you may have no choice. I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience in the War Room League where I started Teddy Bridgewater over him this week and ended up working out. Not enough because Stefanya's team went crazy, but 12.9 fantasy points for Ryan Tannehill. I think the question is, will things get better? And a lot of the indicators to me suggest no. Mike Clay, though, had an interesting tweet this morning, which you're going to bring it up, and you can just read it word for word rather than me trying to emulate it.
Sure. So Mike Clay, at Mike Clay NFL on Twitter, our friend and colleague here at ESPN, tweets this. Mike's a smart guy. Ryan Tannehill has thrown more than 1 touchdown in only 1 game this season. However, all caps, the Titans have scored 33% of their touchdowns through the air. That's compared to a 58% expected rate based on play calling. They scored 57% through the air in 2020, 59% in 2019. Better days ahead.
Okay.
In other words, basically, based on their play calling and based on what that offense has done each of the last 2 years, they should score a little under 60% of their touchdowns through the air. To date, they've scored 33% of their touchdowns through the air. We talk about regression all the time on this podcast. Better days are ahead for Ryan Tannehill. Couple other things to keep in mind in addition to the stats and the numbers that Mike tweeted. First off, from the eye test, I thought Ryan Tannehill looked pretty good last night. I thought, look, he moved around in the pocket. Keep in mind, this is a quarterback that going into the game had been the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. Didn't get sacked last night. Moved around in the pocket pretty well. And obviously, Julio Jones, disappointing game for him. Makes an amazing catch off of the helmet, leaves the game with injury. It's always the story with Julio, but gets A.J. Brown back. And so hopefully he gets Julio Jones back. But just having those guys back, I think will help. And look, it's a game in which Derrick Henry scored 3 touchdowns, and we'll get to him in a second. But ultimately, teams are going to at some point, he's going to start seeing 8-man boxes, right? At some point, you just if not even, and it may not matter.
I mean, yeah, I was going to say,
I'm just saying, I just
41
think
games of this by now.
Right? But anyway, they're playing the Chiefs this week. Especially, by the way, given where we are at, there's Dak Prescott's out, right? I mean,
Josh Allen.
Yeah,
tons of guys. Justin Herbert.
Yeah, exactly. Justin Herbert. Kirk Cousins, who, by the way, is a top 12 fantasy quarterback on the year. So there's guys that are going to be out this week. So you might need a quarterback in fantasy. And I'm just saying, I'm not getting rid of Ryan Tannehill. If you've been rolling with him so far, I do think I buy into the tweet that Mike says. I also from the eye test, and I also just think he's a good player. I'm not bailing just yet on Ryan Tannehill.
Well, big week ahead for him because it's a great
Yes.
matchup, as you mentioned, against Kansas City. Daniel, what do you got?
I'm also not bailing on Tannehill, but I want to ask sort of like a devil's advocate question, and I don't want this to be super long, but do you think that the loss of Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith have affected Ryan Tannehill more than he's getting credit for? Because Julio has not done, right? He hasn't really done anything, unfortunately, to be able to help. Anthony Firkser is not a bad tight end, but neither of them are, as a part of this, is this regression based on what he's been able to play with on the field, based on what he had the last couple of years?
He was atypically efficient the past few years, ridiculous. We're talking about throwing a touchdown pass on a percentage basis of his throws at an incredible rate. This is probably the opposite side of the luck spectrum. He's been unfortunate this year. He had been extremely fortunate the past couple of years. He's probably closer to somewhere in the middle. He's a great player. He has not had a great fantasy season so far. And the Titans have a closer that, as Daniel and I were discussing this last night, Derrick Henry getting a carry from the 15-yard line and in is the equivalent of any other running back getting a carry from the 3-yard line and in. Like, that's how confident I am that Derrick Henry has a chance of scoring. That's how dominant he is. I want to save Derrick Henry for the very end of this conversation because it's just fun. Let's get to the wide receivers.
But
quickly.
all I would say to my answer to that, Daniel, would be that I think the loss of A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, he hasn't really had those guys for much of the year, is a much bigger loss than Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith.
That's fair.
Like, so I just think they haven't had a chance to have their offensive gel. I think there's also been some bad luck and some game script issues as well. And so
Nobody's really been 100% across the board on that offense for the whole season for Tannehill to have.
So anyway, better days are ahead. I agree with Mike Clay, and I thought he looked pretty good last night.
So Julio Jones leaves the game last night. As you mentioned, Matthew, it's a hamstring issue. We do not know the severity of it. He had just 8.9 fantasy points. I got to be honest with you, he makes some ridiculous plays, including the catch he had last night, which fell off or bounced off the helmet of Micah Hyde, who was running away from the line of scrimmage. We couldn't see it. He still does some things that are just unlike other players, but I think I understand why the market was rather tepid for Julio Jones this offseason. Age, ability to stay on the field, and consistency are things that I think leave somebody to be desired right now at this stage of his career. A.J. Brown did look good last night, though, Matthew. He had 7 catches on 91 yards, 16.1 fantasy points. A lot of that came in the second half of last night's game, but I don't care. I don't know the specific number of snaps that A.J. Brown played last night, but he looked like a fairly regular player for that Titans offense, Matthew. Good sign for A.J. Brown. He looked much more like the player that we expected him to be coming into this year.
And that's the point, right? Slow start. He'd been out for a couple of games and just wasn't doing much. By the way, tough defense, right? This is, the Bills coming to this game, like they got exposed a little bit, credit to the Titans, but the Bills are good defense, and they came into this game, and so it took a little while for A.J. Brown to get warmed up, but he's still the first read on this option. He's still the first read in this passing offense, and my expectation is that A.J. Brown is going to be A.J. Brown-like the rest of the way.
I hope so. Let's talk about Derrick Henry now for fun. Derrick Henry.
He's awesome.
So let's be clear. 35.6 fantasy points is remarkable. It's also something that we have seen in the past, right? I mean, like Christian McCaffrey has scored over 30 fantasy points plenty of times in his career. It's just something different about Derrick Henry. Like he had 2 catches last night to Derrick Henry.
He actually had 6 catches last night, and 4 of them were called back by penalties. I'm not joking.
Like he is almost as good in non-PPR scoring as he is in PPR scoring.
Seriously.
It's just ridiculous, Matthew. It feels like every game he is embarrassing a defender, running past defenders like he is the size of Tyreek Hill, and then also finding the end zone 2 or 3 times. It is absurd right now. He has 10 rushing touchdowns. He has 750 rushing yards already. If a player finishes with 750 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns for a full season, we pat that guy on the back and say, job well done. Yeah. He's done it in 6 games. He has 11 more to go. He is ridiculous. He is an alien. He's unlike anything else I've ever seen. We are way too prematurely talking about 2022 rankings, Matthew. But I don't know how. I talked myself out of Derrick Henry before the preseason and having him number 1 in my rankings. I knocked him down to 2. I regret that. I will never rank a player not named Derrick Henry, number 1 on my preseason ranks until he gives me a good reason not to.
Wow.
The whole idea of him falling off a cliff, you know what? It could come in any season. It also might not, Matthew, right? Like
He's just built different.
he's built
This is
different.
what I
He's
put out
showing
there,
no
like-
signs of wear and tear at all.
There were a number of fantasy analysts out there, not Maya, not you, and I'm not trying to call anyone out specifically because Lord knows I've gotten my stuff wrong, and we've all made bad calls. But there were definitely certain fantasy analysts out there that were very much of the fade him this year. The usage is going to catch up. The 350 touches. He's not using the passing game. Just and he's just built different. He is built to withstand that kind of usage, built to withstand that kind of punishment. One of the things we've talked about throughout this season is how they are involving him more in the passing game, right? And which is incredible. To your point, caught 6 passes last. The box score doesn't show it, but he
really did catch 6 passes last night.
Right. And so, think about this. The Titans wouldn't let him start over DeMarco Murray for a couple of years.
DeMarco was pretty sweet back in the day. That being said, I know.
He ain't Derrick Henry,
That's
and not at
correct,
that stage of his career when he was
I
with
know.
Tennessee.
Hey, I'll tell you what,
Because that
though,
wasn't Dallas DeMarco Murray. That was post-Dallas
fantasy
DeMarco Murray.
managers that have Derrick Henry now are thankful that he didn't get that usage earlier on because he's
Sure.
able to be up here in age and still be able to run the way he does.
So here's a question then.
Okay.
Is there any scenario, let's try to give some actual fantasy advice other than just, he's awesome.
No, okay.
Is if you have Derrick Henry, are you open to trading him? And if you are, what would it take to get Derrick Henry from you in a redraft league?
Yeah.
Because you have him in our dynasty league.
I do.
I was up big on field in our dynasty matchup last night. I was up big, and then I got Derrick Henry'd. We were going
you got
into
Micah
I think,
Hyde.
I think I was up 20 or something like on field, and I had Emmanuel Sanders and 20 points or 25 points, something like that, and he had only Derrick Henry left, and
Wow.
you ended up
we have, I believe, 11 bench spots in that league.
yeah.
9 of mine are players that are on IR right now.
Right. I mean, 7 of our mine. I mean, you and I are limping into this game.
My team is literally being dragged by Derrick Henry to not even respectability. Like, I'm just sort of average in that league. So that's a whole different kettle of fish, dynasty league considerations. I think in redraft league
leagues.
considerations, I think you need 3 legitimate starters to trade away Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one, like, if it's Dalvin Cook plus, I'm just making this up here. Dalvin Cook plus DK Metcalf, I'd probably, that's different. That's 2 potential stars. I think in most cases, I'm going to need 3 legitimate, bona fide, set it and forget it players. He's just such a decided advantage, Matthew, in this game that is so unpredictable. And
that's go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's so unpredictable. Guys are constantly in and out of lineups. And I'm not saying Derrick Henry is immune to any sort of injury. These are players that are all obviously vulnerable every time they step on the field. He is just so freaking good.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous. 3 starters.
Yeah, and I think the important part of your analysis there is set it and forget it. Not 3 guys that not 3 flex plays.
Yeah, right.
3 guys that you have no questions about whatsoever.
Right.
And so even then I'd be hard pressed, right? Because then you have to what 2 players am I dropping out of my starting lineup, and are the other 2 players significant enough upgrades over the 2 players that I'm dropping out of my starting lineup that it's worth taking the downgrade from Derrick Henry to another running back, which is obviously in that the 3-person trade you're suggesting, one of them would have to be a starting running back.
Last thing here, and then we'll go.
Okay.
Send us your trade proposals, either for or trading away Derrick Henry. I'd be curious to see what people are offering, what gets the job done.
How do you want them to send it? You want to tweet us at
tweet
Fantasy
us
Focus?
At Fantasy Focus. And maybe we'll revisit them at some point in the near future. All right, we're coming up with some waiver talk and so much more in just a minute. But first, hey, football fans, we have an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about. It's called Get Upside. Our listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use promo code FFF and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code FFF to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your free bank account PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code FFF to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. That's code FFF.
This episode is also brought to you by Captain Morgan. NFL fans know with the season underway, you got to have the right players for all 60 minutes to bring that spark. And sometimes you got to sub someone in order to switch things up. Well, the same thing goes for that drink in your hand on game day. So if you're looking to sub in something more refreshing, pour yourself a delicious, crisp Captain Morgan Original Spiced Rum and Ginger. Sub in the Captain Morgan, the official spiced rum of the NFL. Visit CaptainMorgan.com to find Captain near you. Please drink responsibly. Captain Morgan Run Company, New York, New York. All right, coming out of that field, Yates, unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to another member of the
Lost a
Fantasy
lot of good men
Focus
out there.
060 and 0 Survivor League.
Yes.
This week, Matthew
It
Berry.
is Jackson Agello. Jackson, of course, does social media for us here on the 06010. He does a lot of the video clips as well that you see. He runs the @Fantasy Focus account.
That's a great
He's a great dude. He's a Syracuse graduate. We're pretty close in age. I think we're both around. We both graduated in the last couple of years.
Yeah, close.
Jackson and I. So we feel bad for him.
It's too
He had a
bad.
chance. He had a chance at surviving. It was down to him and David Presley, one of our producers.
Yes.
And
Team Cobra Kyler did not make it
Cobra
through.
Kyler. He did have Kyler Murray.
Wasn't enough.
Wasn't enough. Had DK Metcalf. Twitter tough guy DK Metcalf was on the team. Now available
Actually pretty
in
funny.
free agency.
It was
What?
actually a pretty funny interaction between he and Sierra Sharp on Twitter.
Did you think it was funny? Because I thought, listen, I'm a big DK Metcalf fan.
Yeah.
But I thought, like, I don't know, whatever you want to think about Shannon Sharp as an opinion maker, and as a broadcaster, you can't argue about the man's NFL bona fides.
The amazing part is that as great as Shannon Sharp's career was,
Yes.
he was ahead of his era. Like, he would have absolutely
God.
dominated in a way that, like, Travis Kelce is dominating in today's NFL.
Correct.
Super freak athlete. They just didn't throw the ball nearly as much when he was playing as they do now.
No, exactly right. That's exactly right. And the defensive rules were different back then than they are
Totally.
now. They were much tougher on pass catchers than they are these days. 1,000% agree. If Shannon Sharp played in today's NFL, he would be Kelsey-esque.
Right.
He would be Tony Gonzalez. I mean, he was that good, that physically gifted. And so, I mean, like, again, he's a member of the Hall of Fame. He's won 3 rings. Like, again, whatever you think about him as an opinionist, and obviously I know there's people on both sides of that coin there, and that's part of his job, is to be divisive, is to be controversial. But I was just like, come on. Like, that's and I'm a DK Metcalf fan. Like, I like the player. I'm a big fan of his, but yeah. So I thought it was, but good for DK for publicly taking the L.
Yeah. No, and you know what? It's just Twitter, man. It's just Twitter. Like, don't take this stuff too seriously. Let's get into the waiver wire.
I have a friend that used to tell me, he goes, man, it's all just pro wrestling.
Yeah.
It's like, which really is.
Entertainment.
It is. Twitter especially, but specifically, all of it. Sports media, all of it. Half of what we do. Everything we do, honestly.
Totally,
On any sports network, not just ESPN. It's all pro wrestling on some level.
Let's get to the waiver wire, shall we, for week 7? And as Matthew mentioned, it's called Buy-Mageddon this week. The 6 teams that are on a bye are the Bills, the Chargers, the Cowboys, Jaguars, Steelers, and Vikings. So let's go to the quarterback streamers, Matthew. This week in the waiver wire column, I put together streaming options for quarterbacks. I would tell you these are guys you could pick up for the rest of the season, but as we've talked about a million times over, there are so few opportunities to actually replace your quarterback. So I begin with my Week 7 streaming quarterback options with Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders, who has 4 games with at least 21 fantasy points this season. He's been really solid for Las Vegas. Again.
Yeah, and by the way, multiple touchdown passes in 5 of 6 games so far this season. I don't know. By the way, going into Monday Night Football, I don't know if this is still the case. I don't know if Josh Allen passed him, but he was second in the NFL in passing yards to Tom Brady.
Wow.
Heading into Monday Night Football. So again, Allen may have passed him, but whatever.
I'm guessing Josh Allen did with 333.
Exactly,
but still,
it probably
he's
was.
been-
So, but still, whatever.
He's
Top
third
3.
in-
He's
yeah.
third in passing yards, and credit to Greg Olson and the staff of the Raiders. Raiders offense didn't look like it missed a beat without John Gruden on Sunday. Expectations against the Eagles this week should be, another high-scoring game. I agree with you on Derek Carr.
I'm going to let you play host for a little bit here.
So if Derek Carr is not available, who is next quarterback on your list, Field?
Sorry, really quickly. By the way, Josh Allen did not pass Derek Carr. Derek Carr is still number 2.
Wow,
look at that.
Pretty good. Pretty
Look
impressive.
at them apples.
So number 2 passing yardage. That's pretty impressive there from Derek Carr. Second option for me would be Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins, who this past week had 21.4 fantasy points against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We talked about this on Monday's show. The Dolphins cannot run the football, Matthew. They are an atrocious offensive line, especially in terms of generating opportunities for their running backs. They play the Falcons on Sunday. The Falcons are a defense that they're nothing great, so I'm not scared of the matchup. I think Tua's going to have to throw again. Tua adds a little bit of value with his legs as well. I think Tua can get you 20-plus fantasy points this weekend.
To the point of you think Miami's going to have to throw again. Did you know they are the pass-heaviest offense in the NFL?
Makes me sick. How is that possible?
Because they can't run the ball.
That's true.
And by the way, they can't play defense.
Yeah.
So there you
Especially
go.
with their top 2 cornerbacks out.
That is what is called a problem. All right, Derek Carr, Tua are both gone, so I'm going further down the list. You looking to Thursday night?
Potentially. So Teddy Bridgewater doesn't have the same ceiling as I think Derek Carr does, but he has 18 or more fantasy points in 4 games already this season. The Broncos do have good pass catchers, even with all of their injuries, and even if Jerry Jeudy does not return on Thursday night, there's still Cortland Sutton, there's still Tim Patrick, there's still Noah Fant, and the Broncos, maybe they just have been undone by their defense recently, but they have been throwing it a lot. Maybe you're a little bit nervous that they can find a way to just control this game on Thursday if Cleveland's down to their backup quarterback and down to their third-string running back and down Odell Beckham Jr. and maybe doesn't have Jarvis Landry, things like that, Matthew. But I still think Teddy B, professional quarterback, he's been a pretty solid player so far for Denver this season.
He's absolutely been solid. You mentioned all the injuries to Cleveland. Games in Cleveland, I generally don't like road teams on a Thursday night,
right?
On a short week. And it's one of the lowest over-unders on the slate. We expect this to be a little bit of a slugfest. But to your point, Cortland Sutton has looked fantastic. Noah Fant has looked great. Tim Patrick suddenly very usable. All of a sudden, you're like, you know what? They have some pass catchers there. We don't know if Jerry Jeudy's going to play in this game. Probably not, but we don't. But he is eligible. He could be activated to play in this game, so we'll see if that ends up happening. But yes, again, it's by-mageddon. You may not have a choice. We do think that Teddy Bridgewater will be usable this week. Maybe not ideally, but potentially usable. Let's move to the running backs now, Field. And we think the top guy on your list will be available this week.
We think he is. That's Alex Collins, who is available in about a third of leagues, actually, right now. So we're still trying to figure out, roster percentage. Sometimes these things are constantly updating, so he's not as available as I thought he was. Normally, we try to keep this at players who are rostered in fewer than 50% of leagues. That being said, I would take a look at least for Alex Collins, who Pete Carroll yesterday during his press conference said it's not a serious injury for Alex Collins. It's a hip issue, but they don't know yet about his status for Week 7, and it'll probably take another couple of days before they do. So here's my recommendation. Take a look for Alex Collins. Add him if you can. Keep an eye out on the news today if we get some sort of update. And potentially have your eyes on Rashad Penny, who, before you laugh, I know it's a first-round pick that they failed on. They should not have used the first-round pick on him then. It looks even worse now. He is eligible to be designated from IR this week, and Pete Carroll is very confident about him being back. I suppose you could turn towards DJ Dallas or Travis Homer, Matthew. I do wonder, though, could this be a rare spot where in a deep league, a flyer on Rashad Penny could actually work out?
Potentially. A couple of sort of red flags, if you will. First off, it's Monday night. They play the Monday night game against the Saints, so we may not know his status until after you've had to make a bunch of other lineup decisions. The other piece is they're playing the Saints. And they're playing the Saints coming off of a bye.
Defense, yeah.
The Saints have had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and that's a very good run defense. It's one of the best in the NFL. In fact, over the last 4 weeks, they're the third best run defense in the NFL. So it's not a great matchup. Having said that, it wasn't a great matchup against the Steelers. And Alex Collins ran all over that. Credit to the Seahawks offensive line. So I would have more confidence if we're Collins than Penny, who we haven't seen this year, obviously.
Yeah.
But again,
by-mageddon.
It's by-mageddon.
Yeah.
We can't be guys, we can't be choosy here. We can't be picky. We're looking for pulses. We're looking for live bodies. Oh, you're going to be active and potentially touch the ball in a game? Come on down. We're open for business.
Yes,
so
we sure
that's what
are.
we're talking about here this week because, again, all these players on a bye. Again, no Zeke, no Dalvin Cook, no Austin Eckler, no Najee Harris, no James Robinson, before you get to the fact that no Kareem Hunt, possibly no Nick Chubb, possibly no Antonio Gibson. It's
Slim pickings this week, that
slim
much is for
pickings this week. Speaking of possibly no Antonio Gibson,
Yeah.
let's head to Washington, where there's not a lot of positives this year for the football team, but there has been one bright spot.
That's right. J.D. McKissick, very good pass catching back for Washington. This past week, he had 19 fantasy points. And Matthew, you actually mentioned this yesterday. While it may not be their preference to constantly hammer him between the tackles, he will get some run on occasion as a back. He's not just a pass catcher for Washington, even though in previous stops of his career, he has been a wide receiver. But his last 42 games, 135 catches. I know it's not ridiculous for J.D. McKissick. And I'll just say this, really good pass catcher, really reliable, a lot of dump offs. He's going to catch everything. They're going to be behind again this week. I'm expecting that at least, right?
And by
There's
the way,
no reason to believe they won't be behind. I don't care who they're playing in a given week. They're so bad defensively that the game script should be in his favor.
And that's a great point. That's what I was going to bring up. By the way, they're as the lines open, they are 9.5 point underdogs to the Packers.
Wow.
And the over under is 49. Right. So as of this taping, so they're more than a touchdown underdog. They're on the road at Green Bay against a red hot Packers offense in a game that we expect to be fairly high scoring. And so I agree with you, especially with, by the way, they're down pass catch. Curtis Samuel can't get on the field, right? They've got Terry McLaurin, they've got Ricky Seals-Jones, and Ricky Seals-Jones is a viable option, and maybe we'll talk about him in a minute. But when you sit there going, who's Washington rolling out there? It's DeAndre Carter. They don't have So just in terms of tried and true pieces of that offense, they are far and few in between for Scott Turner and his staff. So I would expect J.D. McKissick, to your point, to touch the ball early and often in this game, regardless of the health of Antonio Gibson, because when they've been behind, and it's been often this year, they've seemed to prefer McKissick in the pass catching role. And so, this is a guy that led the football team in catches, targets, and receiving yards last week.
Let's move forward to some wide receivers. I'll give you just a couple of names here and then one tight end as well. Tim Patrick makes my list for the 19th straight week. He's the Broncos wide receiver who just continues to find a way. He has over 12.5 fantasy points in 5 of 6 games this season. The Broncos, as we just discussed, have been throwing the football a bunch. Teddy Bridgewater has the second most passing attempts over the past 2 weeks, behind only Patrick Mahomes. No KJ Hamler for the rest of the season. Sounds unlikely that we'll see Jerry Jeudy on Thursday night. He'll be the number 2 in a game in which we think Denver should be able to move the football effectively enough. Get Tim Patrick on your roster. He's such an underappreciated player. And I'm not sick of Tim Patrick. I'm sick of having to convince you to go pick up Tim Patrick. He's too good to not be on more rosters.
1,000% agree. Again, and I say this with no disrespect, he's a professional wide receiver. He's just a solid professional wide receiver. Is he going to wow you? No, he is not. But is he somebody that is running a bunch of routes and getting a decent amount of targets in a functional offense? He is. And so on a waiver wire that's kind of slim pickings, Tim Patrick makes a lot of sense, as does somebody who I have in speaking of our Dynasty League, it's rebuilding year for me. I've got Logan Thomas out. I've got Chris McCaffrey out. I lost J.K. Dobbins for the year. And I also lost this guy. He's now coming back.
Rashad Bateman for the Ravens had 4 catches in his NFL debut this past week. 4 catches for just 26 yards. Not huge production, but he got 6 targets. The team was encouraged by what they saw from him. He's a first-round pick for a reason out of Minnesota. The Baltimore offense is electric right now. Anything closely associated with Lamar Jackson is a good thing. So I think this is an add and stash, Matthew. I don't know that I would be using him this week. It may be that you don't have a chance to use him at all this season. But there's also a chance that he breaks out is a clear number 2 passing game option behind only Mark Andrews, or maybe number 3 behind only Mark Andrews and Hollywood Brown, and you're like, oh, the guy that averaged over 20 yards per catch last season for Minnesota and was one of the best wide receiver prospects in the country, oh yeah, maybe he was worth adding given the offense he plays in.
I think that's right, and I think it's the Sammy Watkins role, right? So Sammy Watkins has had 4 healthy games so far this year. He's gotten 7 targets a game. Last week, here's a guy, Rashad Bateman, who got 6 targets, who ran around on 61% of the Ravens' dropbacks in his first game back. He was somebody that was getting a lot of buzz in training camp before he got injured. And to your point, you go back and you watch his college film, like, he's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, this is a really talented player, and I'm a believer in just betting on the talent. Betting on the talent is one of the reasons why I have him in our Dynasty League. Like, he's a guy that I was a big believer in coming out of college, and so I like him very much for Dynasty. But I certainly think this year, especially given that they're opening it up more in the Ravens offense, I do think Bateman is a very worthwhile stash. Potentially usable this week against the Bengals, 21st against the pass over the last 4 weeks, but certainly somebody that has the upside and potential to really do some damage down the stretch.
Last one here, and then we'll get to the empty out the bucket portion of the show. Ricky Seals-Jones has been playing basically Logan Thomas role since Logan Thomas went down. Not quite as efficient or effective, but he ran a route on 95% of Washington's dropbacks this past week. It was 77% the week before. When they're throwing the football, he's almost always on the field. You mentioned earlier in the show, it's not just by Mageddon. You've got injuries all over the board, whether it's Dawson Knox, who happens to be on his bye anyways. There are injured tight ends. Gronk is uncertain to play this week. Logan Thomas, as we know, remains on IR. There are a ton of tight ends right now, Matthew, that are not going to be available, and there are so few that you can actually trust, as it were. I would be adding Ricky Seals-Jones if I had any question marks about my tight end spot whatsoever.
So the 2 games that he started, weeks 5 and 6, between those 2 games, how many snaps do you think he's missed?
20?
1.
Wow.
He's played every snap but 1 on offense over the last 2 weeks. He got 3 end zone targets in week 5. He scored last week as well. Again, we just talked about it earlier when it comes to J.D. McKissic. Like, they don't have a lot of guys there in Washington on a team that is going to need to throw quite a bit, especially in a game where we expect them to be trailing to the Packers. I like Ricky Seals-Jones quite a bit as long as Logan Thomas is out.
All right, Field. So here's what I want you to do. I want to have you give us your Week 7 free agent finds. They are brought to you by Captain Morgan. Bench the boring drinks and sub in the captain on game day. Captain Morgan, the official spice rum of the NFL. Field, rank us 5 through 1. Who are you picking up this week?
Let's actually start at number 1 this week, Daniel. Alex Collins for the Seahawks. Take a look if he's available. He handled a significant number of their running back touches this past week. He had over 100 yards rushing. He found the end zone. There is a health concern here, so also keep your eyes on Rashad Penny just in case. But hopefully we have more information early in the week regarding Alex Collins' status. I'm going to mention Derek Carr, number 2, and he's kind of emblematic of all the quarterbacks that are available as streamers this week, Teddy Bridgewater and Tua included. Derek Carr, as we talked about just a few moments ago, number 2 in the NFL in passing yards. Got 4 games with 21 or more fantasy points so far this season. He has been rock solid for the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 3, J.D. McKissic. You've got a couple of factors that work in his favor. First of all, we do not know if Antonio Gibson will be available in Week 7 with that shin issue. Second of all, Washington plays against Green Bay. I would not be surprised if this game is a multi-score deficit early in the game, which means more and more and more throwing. J.D. McKissic is excellent as a pass catcher out of the backfield. Number 4 for me is Tim Patrick, the Denver Broncos receiver who just keeps finding a way, over 12.5 fantasy points in all but 1 game so far this year. Hasn't dropped the pass in like forever. He just never, ever, ever drops passes. Don't know that we'll see Jerry Jeudy on Thursday night. Another good opportunity for Tim Patrick. And finally, we close things out with Ricky Seals-Jones. 2 Washington football team members make the top 5. Ricky Seals-Jones, I believe, the best available tight end in over 50% of leagues. Matthew just told you he's missed just 1 snap in the past 2 games. He's got 9 catches in the past 2 games. Effective player. It's hard to find tight ends. You have an option in Ricky Seals-Jones. We're going to empty the bucket in just a second. But first, a couple of words from friends. Everyone likes shopping online, but searching for coupon codes is kind of a bummer.
Oh my God, such a bummer.
Yeah, it's the worst. So make saving online a breeze with Capital One Shopping. Capital One Shopping is a free tool that instantly searches for available coupon codes and automatically applies them at checkout. Just download Capital One Shopping to your computer and let it do the work for you. It's so easy, and you don't even need a Capital One card to use it. Capital One Shopping. It's kind of genius. What's in your wallet? Savings and available coupons may vary.
Do you own or rent your home? Yep. Sure you do, and I'll bet it can be real hard work too. But you know what's easy?
What?
Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. And it's a good thing too because you already have so much to do around your home. So go to geico.com, get a quote, see just how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com. All right, Field Yates. I'm sorry about that. Oh, we are going to empty the bucket here on week 6 before we jump into a scary week 7. But you want to know what's really scary? Seeing just how much you could have saved by switching to Geico. Visit geico.com and see if saving money is in your future. Happy Geico-ween, everybody. All right, emptying the bucket presented by Geico this week. Field, just take us into it.
We're just going to rip right through some things, some sustainable or not performances from week 6. Matthew, Darnell Mooney is available in over 50% of leagues. He had 5 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown. He's just sort of been up and down, right, all season. Like, the volume's been pretty steady, but that passing offense, here's a fun fact for you.
Okay.
They have fewer than 200 passing yards in every game this season.
Wow, that's not a fun fact at all.
They're the first team since the 2010 Titans to open the year with 6 straight games of fewer than 200 passing yards.
Daniel, did the definition of fun change while we
it
were
did.
sleeping?
I'm surprised the Lions haven't even done that.
That's.
Wow,
I mean,
that's
that's. I sleep all the time at my advanced
Here's
age.
a fact for you. How about that? That was just a fact.
Okay, there you go. That's not fun at all, except
Yes.
for right.
Would you be adding Darnell Mooney right now?
I actually
Or
would.
is he
I actually would.
Add and stash. That's about it.
No, look. First off, like the talent. Preseason sleeper for me. Believe in the talent. By the way, he leads the Bears. I certainly did not expect this.
Yeah.
He leads the Bears in targets, receptions, receiving yards. Like, it ain't Allen Robinson. It's Darnell Mooney. Like, 3 straight games, he's had as many or more targets than Allen Robinson. It's his 4th game this year with 7 or more targets. The passing offense is getting better so far this year. And you think about this matchup coming up with Tampa Bay. They ain't going to be able to run on Tampa Bay. They're going to have to throw. And so my expectation here is that they're going to take some shots to Darnell Mooney. Again, during a Bye-Mageddon, kind of like Darnell Mooney. I do like him. I believe better days are ahead for Justin Fields and this Bears offense. And I do believe Mooney, who is a talented player who had flashes last year as a rookie and is a really good deep threat, which is one of the things that Justin Fields does well. He has very good deep ball accuracy. So, yes, I'm in on Darnell Mooney. Shout out to our friend Michelle Steele, by the way, Real Steele, who on Fantasy Football Now this past Sunday morning, she was reporting live from the Bears game.
Right.
And we asked her, Field, you were interviewing her, and you said, hey, what should we be on the lookout for from the Bears today? And she specifically said, Darnell Mooney is somebody that should have a very good game that fantasy managers should start. I know they're excited about him, and he's going to be a big part of the game plan. Well, what happened? Scored a touchdown, 5 for 45, does get the touchdown, 15.5 fantasy points. Nice call by Michelle.
Tyler Boyd's too good to be dropped right now, Matthew.
Correct.
But is he simply just your bench insurance in case something happens to T. Higgins or Jamar Chase? Because he had 1 catch for 7 yards on Sunday. He has been under 40 receiving yards in 4 of his 6 games. Coming into that game, he was averaging 9 fantasy points when both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase were also active. How can you trust him when both of those guys are both healthy?
You unfortunately can't, and he was somebody that I was really high on that I thought was being underdrafted in the preseason. So, as long as I pat myself on the back, I gotta own that as well. So far I've been dead wrong on Tyler Boyd. I thought there'd be a connection between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Didn't think it would happen this quickly and this significantly. So for whatever reason, he's just not going to Tyler Boyd. Now, maybe once we have a few more games of Burrow out there with the 3 of them, that'll change some things. And also, by the way, it does seem like they're finally letting Burrow throw more, whereas they were fairly conservative early in the year. Also, not for nothing, your Lions didn't put up much of a fight there.
No, they didn't.
Daniel. So,
Nope.
there wasn't a huge need for Joe Burrow to have to throw in this one. They were running the ball really effectively.
Quite effectively.
So against Baltimore, I don't know that they're going to have that luxury. They may have to throw more. But yes, when you ask me, do I trust Tyler Boyd at the moment? I don't. Trust is a strong word, and it's not one that I would use for Tyler Boyd. I agree with you, however, too talented to just drop yet.
Can I ask on that point, another wide receiver that we've talked about that we had higher expectations for is Robbie Anderson? I would love to talk about. I mean, are we at the point where Tyler Boyd we're not dropping because there's still something there? Robbie Anderson, are you good to welcome to Dumpsville?
Yes.
It's a tough one, though, right? Because he had 11 targets on Sunday.
I know.
He had 11 targets and 11 receiving yards.
I know. They
Yeah,
didn't make it
that's
easy.
the second straight week he's had 11 targets.
It's ridiculous.
It's insane.
I don't know how. I don't know. I really, this is much more Kyle's vein than it is mine. Like, I don't know when we had, like, I wonder what the fewest fantasy points are for a wide receiver that has, like, at least 120 targets in a single season. And whatever that is, I wonder if Robbie Anderson is on pace to break that record, like in a bad way, right? Matthew, there are a lot of things in life and football that don't always make sense to me. A player receiving a $29.5 million extension just before the year began and then becoming a complete non-factor in this offense is completely inexplicable. I have zero clue what is going on right now with Robbie Anderson. I mean, like, you just wonder if either he's in his own head or if there's just no chemistry with he and Sam Darnold. Like, what's going on?
You know how sometimes, it hasn't happened in a while, but there were some times where there have been famously some baseball players
Yips.
that like the catcher can't get the ball back to second base or whatever, like a second baseman can't throw it, like they just have the yips and they're just so in their own head. And I feel like that's happened with a couple of kickers as well over the years. Feels like maybe that's what's going on with Robbie Anderson. There's no other explanation for a guy that's been productive for much of his NFL career, that was paid by the current regime of his NFL team, and who's being reunited with. I mean, it's not like it's a brand new relationship. Him and Sam Darnold have played together, before, from their time in New York. And so for whatever reason, like, so it should all be there. To your point, 22 targets the last two games.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And yet he has been sub 30. He has been sub 13 fantasy points in every game this year.
Unbelievable.
And so, do I think that Robbie Anderson has a couple of really big blow-up fantasy games the rest of the way? Yes. Do I have any confidence that I'll be able to predict when those come, Field? Absolutely not. So that's why I'm saying I don't mind dumping him. I don't mind dropping him, especially if you're sitting there, you need some people for Mageddon, because he may have 3 big games, and I'll live with that. I traded him away in our War Room League, happily, thankfully, because I'm just like, I'm sure there will be 3 weeks where I'm just like, that was the guy I drafted. But, no, and I probably would have dropped him, honestly, if I couldn't have traded him away. Because it just, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you know what he is? I feel like this year, he's Deshaun Jackson. Like, which is like, and he's a different player, obviously. He obviously still has the deep ball speed. But, like, I'm just saying, like, there will be 3 big games. There'll be 3 big games from here.
There hasn't been one yet. We're a third of the way through the season.
Well, exactly.
Let me ask a question if you guys don't mind, because one of the things that I think is interesting, and you tell me whether or not there's merit in this. The top thing on the note under Robbie Anderson is 11 targets in the 3 CMC starts, 29 targets in the 3 games that CMC has missed. So when CMC is not there, obviously he's going to get increased workload because they have that. The question is, are you thinking that when Christian McCaffrey comes back, all right, well, that offense is going to be more full power and that the whole offense is just going to be better, so that will help Robbie Anderson? But only 11 targets in 3 games with him. That's concerning to me there as well.
First of all, I have no clue when CMC's returning, so I'm not that mindful of it in this construct. Like, you can't afford to just wait to make a decision on Robbie Anderson.
Totally.
That long. You're either committed to
100%.
him or you're out right now. I don't know. Again, there are things that just don't make any sense. Sometimes it's for the positive, right? Guys just keep scoring touchdowns every single week. Robert Tonyan last year. I don't know, Matthew. I have no idea on Robbie Anderson.
I'm making a call. My job is to make a call, so I'm going to make a call. And if I'm wrong on this, I live with it, okay? Because I get it. He's a talented player who's getting a ton of looks, and this is a guy that is believed in by the current regime of his team. Got paid. Obviously, he's playing a lot of snaps. Matt Rule's his former college coach. I'm sitting here saying that, like, we are 6 games through, and he has been unusable. And so I am saying I have no problem dropping him. And if that ends up, because again, I think it is highly unlikely that he turns into a consistent, usable fantasy asset the rest of the way. Again, I think he will have some big games, but I don't think that, barring an injury to DJ Moore or barring something happening, that he suddenly is a lock-it-in starter week in, week out. There are other guys that I would rather roll out there. And so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But yes, for me, he is welcome to Dumpsville.
The last
We're 6
time
weeks
we
in.
proclaimed a person welcome to Dumpsville on this show was Myles Gaskin. He went on to score 30-plus fantasy points the next week. Perhaps we're trying to reverse jinx Robbie Anderson. Who knows? But I'm with you, Matthew. How can you hold on to a roster spot when a guy has been so bad? There are 6 teams on a bye this week. There are injuries all over the yard, Daniel. It has been a mess.
I want to close this out really quickly. I know we have less than a minute, but I have trusted Taylor Heineke the last 2 weeks as a streaming quarterback option for me, Matthew, and he has let me down both of the last 2 weeks. Can I trust the Washington football quarterback if I need a streamer?
Trust is a strong word. I would say no. I mean, again, like Terry McLaurin, not 100%. We don't know what's going on with Antonio Gibson. Heineke's been bad.
Yeah.
Can't do it against the Chiefs.
I
Can't do it
like
against anybody
Heineke
else.
was on the love list last week, and I thought he was a great streamer. Of course, I put that out there before the injury to McLaurin had come up. He was clearly less than 100%, but still.
We thought it was going to be a high-scoring game
We
against
thought
the
it was gonna be a
Chiefs, and that
high-scoring
didn't
game.
help him. So
Shut
it just
out in the second half.
yeah,
Shut out.
Just because it's going to be a high-scoring game with the Packers doesn't mean that he's going to also put up.
It wouldn't surprise me if he puts up big numbers.
Of course, he always could.
But are you if you're saying, can I trust him as a streamer? No, not on the road at Green Bay.
All right, that does it for everything we have today. We're going to come back on Wednesday and pick back up with some rankings chatter, the latest on all the news and any other updates that are pertinent to fantasy in the next 24 or so hours.
Be sure to check out Field Yates' free agent finds column,
Yeah, it's up.
along with a new episode of the Fantasy Show on ESPN Plus with me and Daniel going through all the waivers and more that you need to know from Week 6 heading into Week 7 and getting you ready for Buy-Mageddon. Of course, by the way the way to get an ESPN Plus subscription, one of the ways is through rotopass.com, 5 great sites, plus ESPN Plus. It's a 12-month subscription. You subscribe today, you get it all the way till next middle of October. It's 12 months, including 12 months of ESPN Plus. Read Field's column, read my column, watch the Fantasy Show on ESPN Plus. 06010, that promo code gets you 10% off rotopass.com. And that's pretty much it. That's all I got.
That was an incredible sales pitch from Matthew right there. For Daniel and Matthew, I am Field. We are back tomorrow. We will talk to you then.
Peace out.